Welcome. I'm Natasha.
And I'm Bre.
On Beyond the Marley, we bring you exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the dance team world. Each episode features an engaging conversation with top professionals who share tips and tricks for success and powerful stories that will leave you feeling inspired. Whether you are a seasoned pro or just getting started in the dance team world, Beyond the Marley podcast has something for you.
Hey girl, hey.
Hi.
How's your morning going?
It's good. I have a sick little puppy, so we've been up since almost 3 a.m. Dealing with some things, but
Poor baby.
I know, poor little puppy.
All the time. Then it was up knocking on my door saying I threw up 8 times. Something's just going around.
I get it. Yes. I'm excited to be able to dive into podcast land as always. It gives me so much energy and joy.
Chelsea Pierotti. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good. I've been following her stuff for so long.
I know. We have a doctor in the house today. I'm excited for that. I've been following her for a long time too, so I can't wait to just pick her brain and see more about what she does. And, I just love when you get to meet like-minded people and hear about the impact they're making in dance.
I remember the first time I visited your studio being so impressed with all of the mental stuff and all the mental tools that you were giving your kids. What I was most I thought was the coolest thing when I went to your studio was how you had energy bus for kids and you had all of your little minis or tinies or youth. I don't remember who it was, but they were all coloring their energy bus, right? And you have those conversations with them. And those are the things that stick with kids for life, right? You're building those foundational blocks of how to make happy, thriving, successful young adults in life. And that's everything. And I remember being so inspired when I saw you do that at your studio. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, you and I are both big on culture, mental things. And this is probably one of my favorite guests that we're getting on.
I think too, if we're talking about longevity and just our industry, that's been the biggest shift for me. I feel like when you hear about people being burnt out of coaching or burnt out as dancers, I think this is what's missing, and that's will help prevent that. If anyone wants to have longevity in anything that they do, there comes a point where you have to focus on the mental side and you have to continue to grow as a human, as yourself, in order to serve. Because at the end of the day, we're in a service industry. It's not about us, it's about the people we serve. It's about the kids and it's about the young adults that we get to help shape and help them have healthier lives and continue to build this industry. Once we're gone, the next generation has to take over, making sure that we're doing it and the right way. And I think something that I love about Dr. Chelsea too is that same thought process of dance shouldn't be the thing that you're a victim from. It should be the thing that empowers you. And I think that joy can be lost if we don't do it the right way. And I'm really excited just to see more of what she brings. So really excited. How are you? It's almost competition season for Tornado, and I know it's kind of wrapping up choreography season, but how are you feeling?
Good. We have all of our routines done. Getting ready. Our first competition's in 40 days in December. We're going to Southern California. I always try to find the strongest teams I can to go against. And a lot of those really strong jazz teams are in Southern California. And so taking them down there to compete against some good, strong teams. But it's going. We had some hiccups in the beginning with some culture and team building stuff and some entitlement. Especially we have a large senior class and there was some entitlement in that senior class of what they thought they deserved and what they thought they should be getting. And that actually led to quite a big event, and we are past that and now moving forward and in a good spot and excited to get these routines on the floor for the first time. When's your guys' first competition?
Well, next weekend.
Oh my gosh, soon.
Yep. Yep. As every coach that ever has that moment of just and your stomach turns. No, it is going to be great. We are excited. We do this early competition for a reason. It's to get us out on the floor, get those first competition jitters well out of the way. So when we go in January, it's here we go. It is a bid event that we're going to too. So the early bids, that will be hopefully we'll walk away with maybe a bid to the summit. So, that will be nice to just start chipping away at that list for bids. And it's just our national teams that are going. So that's good too. We're starting off with not all of our routines, just the few. And then this weekend we have a local performance as like a dress rehearsal that we're using it as. Like, get out in front of a crowd and wear our costume, and what does my hair and makeup look like? Just getting all of that put together for the first time in a performance. So it is pressure. So going into it's all about growth, not about perfection, not what it should look like at Summit. And also those videos are great to have. What doesn't hit, what needs to be edited and changed, and what can be altered. So really looking forward to getting that next part of our journey. I would say the biggest thing that we've had to overcome so far would more so our youth team. One, it's like we're still a young youth team. Like some kids cross over from minis, and they're also in that very early the preteen stage. So seeing these kids that were like once tinies and now like entering into youth is one, wild, but two, just seeing how they change mentally as well. So that's been a challenge, and just being able to, I think there's that moment where it gets hard. Our youth palm, I'm not gonna lie, Chelsea Horn, like she's amazing, but man, did she get stack it. And so it was awesome with our youth palm. It's really awesome, but like it's hard. That's what we want, obviously. And so for them, it was that mindset of, well, this is hard, so I just don't like it. I'm not good at it, so I must not like it. So just really, I think we see that in the youth age. It's the age where it's like, well, I've done this since I was 7. Maybe I want to try to go do something else, volleyball or whatever, because it's gotten hard. So it's a lot of conversations about what is hard about it, why is it hard, and is hard a good thing? And that self-awareness, where before when they were tinies, it also was hard when they were tinies, but they just weren't self-aware enough. So now, yeah, it's just constant conversations about it's okay that it's challenging. It's okay that you don't have it perfect. It's okay that you struggle. Love yourself enough to struggle.
Yeah, I always tell my girls, and granted, I mostly work with high schoolers, but that we seek, challenge, and embrace hard, because that's how you grow, right? But how do you get little itty bitty little minds to really seek, challenge, and embrace hard? You have to make it fun, right? And so how do you make it fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we've talked, he's been on our podcast before, James Silvis, and he works with your team, I know as well. He and I were just having a conversation about hard, talking to hard like it's a person, and reading what your relationship with hard is. And yeah, what is your relationship with hard? And if hard was a person, how would you rate that? What would your relationship look like? So I think that was something like him and I had a conversation about ourselves, where we are with hard. I think as we get older, that relationship definitely changes. He had that conversation with the team, and it's really cool. How do you do hard? Well, I'm excited to have Dr. Chelsea with us, and here we go. We're so excited. We have a doctor in the house today. We are excited to introduce Dr. Chelsea Pierotti. She is a sports psychologist and a high performance coach for dancers and dance educators. As a speaker, workshop teacher, and podcast host, Dr. Chelsea's mission is to create happier, more successful dancers through positive mental skills. You can visit her website and check out her awesome podcast, A Passion for Dance, at chelseapierotti.com. Dr. Chelsea, we are so excited to have you. Welcome to Beyond the Marley.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
We get started with the same question every time. It's inspired by John Wooden on leadership. He says, there is no education like adversity. And we know so many of the incredible successes that you've had, and we want to know, and we jump in pretty deep, pretty quick. What has been your biggest struggle to get to where you are today?
I love John Wooden, and I love that question. And I think about there's the hardest struggle as a dancer, and then there's the harder struggle as like a coach and an entrepreneur and like the adult side. They're different things, but I think as a dancer, I always really struggled with feeling like I fit in where I wanted to be. And trying to be too many things, right? Like I wanted to be the ballerina, but I felt like I wasn't built right and didn't have the body to be successful in ballet. Or I really wanted to be, the best in my studio team, but then I would struggle with certain skills and then didn't get recognized. And, just the feeling like I could make it, I could be in the winning team, but I was not going to be the best on that team. And that's okay. And it took me a long time to figure that out and to figure out kind of where I can lean into my skills and be my best. So I think the challenge as a dancer was figuring out how to lean into what I'm good at and bring that strength to whatever team and whatever company I'm a part of, rather than feeling like I was never going to be enough. I don't know if you want, we can go to and then it just keeps going, right? As adults, we figured out there's more and more. But yeah, that was my dancer side. I think that was really hard for me.
I just hit like mark the clip like so many times as you were talking, because I think that it's interesting that you struggled with that as a dancer, and that's anyone that's listening that's a current dancer or coach. So before we get too far, let's tell our listeners what you do. And we said you're a doctor, and we said that you're a sports psychologist. So can you tell us what exactly do you do, and kind of give us that elevator pitch? If like you were sitting in the elevator and I turned to you and I was like, what do you do in life? Tell us, what do you do, Dr. Chelsea?
Sure. So really, I'm a professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder. So I am a teacher first, and I carry that hat all through dance and through my career now. And then on the business and consulting side with dancers, I help dancers learn the mental skills so that they can be more successful and happier on stage. And it's the training different, not just performing different. It really is about how we are in class and how we approach those challenges like you're talking about, to be able to train our best to be our best on stage when we have less than 2 minutes to hit. Like, how do you make sure you're prepared and ready for that?
That's important work too. And we need more people like you out there doing that work, because at the end of the day, dance training is life training, right? And those skills that you teach them are what they're going to remember 10 years down the road when they're going through a struggle in life or with their family or at work. And so I just commend you, because it's the most important work when it comes to youth sports. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it is life skills. And that's what dance does. And that's why I think so many of us make it a career. We know it can teach life skills. And so I love being a part of that on the mental side.
Yeah. So let's start with, what is one of your favorite success stories or breakthrough stories that you've had over your years of working with athletes and coaches and teams?
Sure. So I think you have a coach, there's coaches and dancers, and I've done both. So there's a coach that comes to mind that was taking over a well-established program, right? Like taking over a program that was already really successful, has, over a decade of tradition. And she was really scared and nervous, rightfully so, like had her own talents, but was like, how am I supposed to take over this program? It was a high school team. And we worked together for a few years, and then as part of a group coaching and then one-on-one, of being able to figure out like her coaching philosophy, what's her approach, what's her stamp on the team, and her confidence as a coach, being able to say like, I can do this my way and I can trust myself. And so I think that success was the growth over the few years of being really timid and scared and trying to just emulate the first coach, to a place where now, coaching a successful program herself, where she gets to, can own those accolades as hers and knows that it was, her choices and her efforts and her own identity as a coach, rather than trying to be someone else. So I think that was a really fun transition to see over a few years. And dancer side, I see a lot about the shift in comparison. So I had a high school dancer specifically that was talking to her junior year, thinking about prepping for college teams, like has those big dreams of where she wants to go, but felt like, she was very talented, but this idea of like, well, if I go to any of these, big combines, I don't stand out. I'm the same as everybody else. And the comparison, that's so hard for all of us. And so we talked a lot through kind of that comparison and what would make her stand out and be able to be confident in those auditions. And she's now a sophomore on her dream college team. So not that I take credit for all of that, but I hope that mental piece helped her show up at the auditions the way she wanted to showcase the actual talent that's under there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a couple questions from that. First of all, with the coaches, with your example of that own coaching philosophy, what is that coaching philosophy and trusting yourself? What do you feel like limit you see working with coaches is the biggest limits that you see from coaches?
Sure. I think it starts with trying to understand your philosophy, and it's not emulating someone else. And I think we all start coaching, me included. We start coaching by saying, I love that person. I'm going to coach like them. And sometimes you know that person and you can more deeply emulate them. But a lot of times it's just a coach that has kind of a public presence that you admire. So you try to coach like them. And none of us should coach the same. And so I think those early years, we just kind of mimic, or we coach the way we were coached, right? Which is still mimicking the person who was your coach. And that works at first. I think it's a good first year, just get through it and do the basics. But then after that, it's really figuring out your philosophy, your values, and what matters to you. Is when a coach has solid values, it allows you to make decisions and feel okay about it. And it allows you to not carry all of it home so much, and allows you to handle nasty parents, or when you have just hard decisions to make. Is this person going to be an alternate? And, can I stand behind that decision? And those are hard choices, and knowing that you're making them rooted in your values makes those decisions not necessarily easier, but you can do it more confidently, and you can stand behind them if you have to articulate why to somebody else. And I think that helps coaches stay in it for the long haul. This is really hard. And so I think the biggest mistake I see in the challenge, as you say, is mimicking another coach at first and not figuring out who you are and standing in your own values.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, how do you mimic another coach? I feel like you never know what's really going on behind closed doors or in their practices. And it's like, maybe you want to be like that coach, but you don't know. You don't know what's going on.
You don't know, or what they say at a conference, or you've met them a few times. And I'm sure they're telling the truth. You get good ideas and tidbits from them, but yeah, you're not in it with them. You don't know what they do in those hard choices. You don't know how they would handle certain things. And you can't know, even if it is your best friend, even if it is someone you've known personally for years, you still don't quite know their thought process and how they handle the challenge. So you have to know it, how you would do it.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned values, right? If you have good, solid values, then that can help lead your decisions. In addition to that, what advice would you give new coaches who are either taking over a program or starting a program to develop a program with a good culture and good, a good experience for the kiddos?
Absolutely. It does start with values. Like we've said, having that foundation, and that's personal values, but then it's team values. So I love if a coach is new, being able to talk to the team and create team values, but I do it season to season. So it's not even this is what our program cares about, which is great. And you can have those, but values should evolve every season. You have different dancers. You're coming off of a different season into something new. What do you care about right now? And having the team be a part of that creation, not just the coach saying, this is what we care about. When it's coming from the dancers, they can attach to it more. And then the reason it matters is it's not just the values, because that conversation can be kind of fluffy. It can feel very saying all the right things. And then where's the action? And so the magic for a new coach and any coach is to take those values and say, what are the actions that are going to show that value? How, if we value this sense of community, how do I see that in my teammate? If we value hard work, what does that look like? Because I think I'm working hard and that girl next to me is not. So how do we know that what I'm looking at, I don't think it's hard work, but she thinks it is. So we have to talk about the actions. What do you see in people? How do you live in those values in order for that culture to actually take root and be that strong base that you want it to be?
It's kind of like goals. You can set your goals, but if you don't have the actions of how to get there, then they just become dreams at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's that same kind of thought process, which I really love that you do that with teams and for coaches to do that. My question also is going back to the dancers. You talked about comparison, one of your favorite success stories. And I think that's obviously huge. We have social media, and like we already talked about, even from coach's standpoint, you can't coach like somebody else. You don't know if someone's posting, even when Bre and I post things about Beyond the Marley, yeah, you see a filtered version of that, but you don't know anything beyond that, right? So what about dancers when they're looking through social media? They have, oh, that girl can do that trick better than me, or however, and the confidence. So that is something you work with teams on, is help dancers gain more confidence. So how do you do that?
Sure. It's the long game, but so worth it. And I think comparison is one of the biggest struggles. And when you were asking at the top about kind of those struggles, I think that's really the root of what was going on for me as a dancer. Even though I had the talent to be successful, it was always like, well, but I'm not as good at that one thing or not that one thing. And then even as a coach and as a business owner and as a professor, as a mom, I still do comparison. You still have those external opinions coming at you. And so the first part of it is awareness, is knowing that that comparison it's a mindset trigger for you, that when you compare yourself, it makes you feel smaller or, not good enough. You have to notice that the comparison is usually it's causing a fixed mindset. It's causing that sense of, I have a certain amount of talent. It doesn't matter what I do. I will never look like that, or I will never be able to do that. And when I talk to dancers about a growth mindset, which a lot of them can now tell me what that is, but they're usually a little off, don't quite get it. And we'll say, it just means be positive. I'm like, not really. And it's not what we're trying to do. And so when I talk about confidence and comparison, it's finding that growth mindset again, which is truly just the belief that you can get better with time and effort, and knowing that it might take you a little longer than somebody else, but that doesn't mean you can't get it. Or there might be something where you have to work harder to pick up choreography than the dancer next to you, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And knowing that time and effort will get you there. And so it's that mindset shift. But to confidence specifically that you were asking, it's in small daily actions that push you just a little bit out of your comfort zone, and not sitting in like, this is what I'm good at, so this is what I'm going to keep doing. And for a lot of dancers, that's what happens. So like, oh, well, I'm a leggy dancer, so every time we improv, I'm just going to leg, and everything is about my flexibility. Or like, I'm a good turner, so every improv, every skill, every highlight in a routine is turns. And then you don't practice the things you're not as good at. And that just gets worse and worse as we get older, and we get more and more pigeonholed into what we're, quote, good at and what we're not. And so we stop working on the things that don't come as naturally or that are a little harder. And that's where the confidence is going to come from, is taking those small steps of, okay, this is harder for me. This is a little uncomfortable. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to mess up full out, and I'm going to go and really make it happen. And that doing that every day builds the confidence to be like, I'm the kind of person that sets a goal and works for it, and I can get there.
Absolutely. And that's so important in everything you do. How, as a coach, how do you get all of your kids to understand that? I feel like I just need to shake the computer, because it's like, I have a freshman right now, actually, and she's a freshman, right? So it's like, you should expect to be an alternate. You should expect to be in the back of these formations. You have a lot to learn, a lot of growth to make. And she's incredible. Like, she's a freshman on the varsity team. She's incredible, but she very, very, very much so. If it's leggy, she's front killing it. If it's palm, right, because she comes from studio, as many of our high school dance team dancers do, she hides in the back, or she can't do it because her, she doesn't feel well that day. And I've talked to this girl so many times of, we just want you to learn. You've already grown so much. Like, how do we get better? I need to be able to put you in these routines next year. Let's get as strong as you can as an alternate as possible. But she's so fixed mindset to the point where she wants to quit. She's like, I'm just not good at this. I'm like, no, you are. You can be. We can make you better, I promise. But like, it's a struggle. What advice do you have for coaches in those types of situations?
It is such a struggle, and getting harder and harder, because they want to have it now, and it's putting in that longer time is hard. So two pieces. One, I always tell coaches, especially in the high school and college age range, you are getting them when this mindset's already pretty strong. And that's hard. And at the high school level, you may be the first person to challenge them on their mindset, because a lot of the way education is set up, or the way like parenting movements are right now, there's a lot of that, like, just keep focusing on what you're good at. And if it's not coming naturally to you, then we give up, or we get rid of that roadblock, which is not doing them any service. But so knowing as a coach, like, you're not going to be able to change them in a couple months or even a year. Like, that dancer might not really get it until she's a senior or until she's in college. Like, it'll click eventually. So as a coach, be a broken record, keep talking about it. Don't give up on them. They hear you, even though it's not necessarily changing. So there's that piece. Don't give up on it. But concrete advice is to talk to the dancer about their definition of success. And I think this is the biggest shift I see when I talk to a dancer, because a dancer like that, I bet if you asked her, she might say what she's supposed to say, but if you could be what she thinks she's supposed to say, right? Of like, I just want to, be a better dancer. I just want to have fun. Like they parrot what they're supposed to say, and that's not what they really believe. And when you have a dancer like that, likely their definition of success is being front and center of a varsity routine. And nothing before that is going to be good enough. But that outcome is not in her control, right? That's your choice. That's coach's choice. So when I have dancers who have that external sense of success, he's like, I'm not a good enough dancer until I make that college team. I'm not good enough unless I get to have the highlight in that turn section. Like all of their success is in somebody else's choice, like unless the judges rank us at this level, right? And so helping them start to see like success has to be in your control. It has to be something that you can train and you can do. And your success is not about what coach thinks. And when they start to learn to define success as something even micro, like you said, maybe success is going full out in POM for the next 3 practices. Like that is a successful week. No, you're still an alternate. No, nothing like changed in your outcome, but you're growing and you had success that week. And I did something that felt awkward, but I did it anyway. And like success has to be self-defined. And for so many of dancers, it's not. It's what coach thinks. It's what my mom thinks. It's what the judges think. And that focus is always going to pull them away from doing the work and training for it.
Okay, a few things. Everything you said, definition of success, absolutely. I come from all-star world, well, high school originally, but now an all-star world, studio world, and trying to implement that at a younger and younger age. And even the mini to youth age kiddos, if you say, well, how do you know you had success today? I phrase it as, what was your win today? Or going into practice, how do we win today? Win meaning in our own
yourself.
How can I control that? Similar language there. But it is still at that mini and youth age, like if we're getting ready to go to competition next weekend, and if I really had to tell them, even though preaching this, if I had to ask them, how do you know that we're going to win the day next weekend? They're going to be like, oh, we get a bid, or oh, we get top 3. And like that will be their instinct. The instinct is immediately that. And being able to really curve that into, or I like to say massage this into their brains and into their thoughts. That's not what it's about. So then going back to disappointment, when dancers experience disappointment, we as coaches feel like we can talk them through that. However, what would you like parents to know about that? If you had a magic wand, you're now gifted the perfect parent words, how would you support as a parent when the dancer has disappointment?
Yeah, such a good question. Parents often are making it worse. They're well-intentioned and we're trying, but they end up making it worse. So the instinct as a parent is to make my child stop hurting. I don't want them to be upset. I don't want them to cry. And so the instinct usually is to make an excuse for why that happened, right? It's like, oh, those judges just don't know what they were looking at. Or you looked amazing, honey. I don't know what happened. And maybe it's true that your dancer really did do well, but sometimes it's like, no, it actually wasn't very clean. And saying it was perfect, the dancer's like, no, it wasn't. I'm aware that it wasn't. We know it wasn't. So for a parent, we want it to go away. We want it to just protect their feelings and make them feel better. But that actually makes it worse, and it will hurt them in the long run, where any small disappointment is somebody else's fault. And so I ask parents, I'm like, step back. What's the skill you want your child to have in the future? And I think any parent would say, I want my child to take a disappointment, or, I didn't get that job, I didn't get into that college, like to take a disappointment and say, that sucks. I'm disappointed, but I got this, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it again. Like parents want their kids to be resilient, and yet your actions in disappointment are going to make it worse. So, and I'm speaking as a parent, like my gut is to make it stop too. I don't want to see my kids upset. But knowing I have to pause and deep breath, I'm like, no, the bigger picture is learning how to handle the disappointments that are going to come. So instead, I will often just like mirror what they're saying, that like reflective listening of, if my child is really upset about a competition or about something at school, it's like, it's the I hear you say, or I can tell this is really upsetting you. And I'm sorry you feel that way. Do you want to talk about it? And like, let them be upset for a little bit, let them sit in it and try to figure out how they really feel. So when you're talking about the minis, the biggest thing you can do with the minis and even all the way into like middle school is just identifying what that emotion is and helping them figure out, like, are you mad? Are you disappointed? Are you sad? With kids, they're like, I'm just sad. I'm like, are you sad or are you lonely? Like, that's different. Like, we need to connect in a different way. So helping them figure out what they're actually feeling is a huge skill to learn as a little kid. And as parents, we just like them. And sometimes like they might not even be that disappointed, but like the dancer next to them is crying. So they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be disappointed.
Or like their parent feels that for
their
them.
parent is upset. Totally.
Yeah.
The parent is the one who's upset. And the kid is like, I actually had a lot of fun on stage and my mom is upset. So I guess I can't be happy. Like, we're actually like taking that away because the kid will see, oh, like my mom is just complaining with this other mom and now they're, bad mouthing the judges and everything. They're bad mouthing this other team. And so as a dancer, even if I was thrilled with what happened on stage, I can't admit that or say that. They'll just mirror what their parents are doing. So it's helping them identify what they are really feeling. Go ahead and sit in it for a minute. Sometimes if I have one child that's like no emotions, shut down, don't express anything. And the other child that is all the emotions out all the time. So I get that. And so the very emotional one, sometimes it is very literally just sitting and like, I'm not going to make you talk about this, but I'm going to sit next to you and take some breaths with you and know that I'm not scared of this emotion. And I'm going to be here when you're ready to talk to me about it. I'm not going to like storm away and let you sit in your scary emotions alone. Again, talking about the littles, but being able to sit with them in it until they're ready to talk about it. So it's basically not sweeping it under the rug. Like, this is real. We will have negative emotions our entire life. And as even from a psychology place, like negative emotions are good. We need them sometimes. And so pretending like they will never happen or pretending like they need to go away and ignoring them is not a healthy human experience. We need to understand what they are and how to cope with them. And so sweeping disappointment under the rug as a parent is not helping your child learn this like basic human life skill, as tempting as it is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So good. Speaking of just necessary emotions that everyone goes through, I think another common emotion that a lot of dancers experience is that pre-performance anxiety. What tips do you have for dancers who, I think everyone experiences it, right? Like if you don't have at least a little bit of butterflies, then, you don't care. The two are related. But for those who really struggle with it, what advice do you have?
Sure. It's a reframing of what anxiety means. So again, these negative emotions like anxiety, and not at a clinical level, like, right, we're just talking about being nervous backstage. Being nervous is your body being ready, right? It is like physiologically, your body is doing the same thing as it would be if you were going on a roller coaster, right? Like you just are standing backstage. You're like, oh, this feeling means I'm nervous. But you can just as easily say, oh, this feeling means I'm excited and ready. And it's how you interpret what your body is doing. And one little thing, like you said, butterflies in your stomach, I like to tell the dancers, like, it's not that you want the butterflies to go away, because a lot of dancers are like, I'm so nervous, I need this, they want it to stop. And it's like, no, you don't need the butterflies to go away. That means you're ready. You just want the butterflies in formation. And we like visualize them, like fly into this nice little triangle up here so we can have them support you. So it's not making it go away. To be tangible, the thing that helps my dancers the most is to have a really clear backstage pre-performance ritual. What do you do when you're backstage? Especially for a lot of us as coaches, we have to leave them backstage at least a routine or two before, right? To go around to music. Some of these competitions, the warm up to on deck is ridiculously long, which is a whole other thing. But they have time backstage to just be nervous, to just, feel their hands shaky and to talk to each other and to be all amped up and panicky. And if you don't intentionally do something about that, that's the dancer that gets on stage and goes too fast. And every coach has seen that. And like, they're jumping the music, everybody's going too fast, and it's not controlling how your body is backstage and what your mind is doing backstage. So it's creating a ritual. What do you do? What are your thoughts? What is your deep breath routine? what helps you calm down. And you have a, 2-minute to 5-minute ritual that this is what you do when you're backstage every time, and not necessarily as a team. And this was hard for me as a coach because I was always like the whole team and it's unity and everybody together. But there's a time for that. But then it actually can be very harmful because some dancers are best prepared backstage when they are at 100, jumping up and down. My energy is, especially for like pom and hip hop, and they're intense and they're excited and they want huge energy. But then you have other dancers who their best is at like a 20 and they want to have slow, deep breaths and be very zen before they go on. But if you're, especially like captains in leadership, are at a 90 and 100 and everybody's full energy, usually like the freshmen or the quieter ones who need to be more calm are now way overactivated and are going to mess up on stage. And so it's having time backstage individually as a dancer. What is your pre-performance ritual? What do you do backstage? And you do it every time and you do it in practice. So as a coach, giving them time to say, okay, you're on deck. I'm going to go do the music. You time it for 2 minutes. You blast something else like the team on stage as before and let them do the ritual and then start. So they have this routine and the confidence that comes from when I do this, I'm ready. And if you do it at smaller performances, a send off, a parent thing, where like there's a little nerves, but it's not bad. And you work your way up to state, nationals, worlds, you can rely on that routine backstage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the backstage, especially no matter the age or the level, it's critical that coaches are coaching that. I think it can be very overlooked and something that as my younger coach self wish I knew to do. And even like you have that warm-up room, and that warm-up room is intimidating. You might be trying to do your jazz piece and someone over here is trying to do game day and you're like trying to feel it, but there's somebody's mascot being ridiculous in a band, so it's, if you don't train that, like your kids are not going to be set up for success in the warm-up room. And then when they go on, well, I didn't even really have a warm-up because I was so distracted. And as much as you say, be in your bubble or anything. And I think there's just so much about backstage that also as coaches, like keeping ourselves in check. I like to share the story of backstage. One of my first times having little tiny people, and we're backstage and you could hear all the performance. It was just right behind the stage is where warm-up was. And then you had your warm-up music and these littles, I'm like shouting over like 3 speakers of music, like, get to your first spot, just so they could hear me. And all of a sudden they're like crying. And I'm like, why is half the team crying? And they're looking at me and they're like, you're yelling at me. And I'm like,
yeah,
no. So I'm like, come, group hug. Okay, this is our warm up. Yep, this is our warm up. Got it. Now, because to a 6-year-old, when you're shouting, your facial expression is not this. It is like, so it is scary. But that, even if that's an extreme example with the littles, but like, even for your older ones, like you have dancers that are like anxious and they feed off of your anxiety as a coach, like, ooh, there's a lot there. So yeah, like, definitely that backstage ritual is a key to success.
It changes as the level of dancer changes, right? So when you have the littles, you have a plan and they have done it a bunch and you stick with it. And then as they get older, you can let it be more and more individualized. So when you have like the programs or your teams where you really are, solid in tradition and the dancer can do it for themselves. Like you can have more fluidity, or you can have more, like, I know we said we were going to run that once, we're going to do it twice. Like you can change it up and they're okay. And it's knowing your team and knowing what that is. But it's so much about practicing it. Like what you said, we'll say the right words, stay in your bubble, don't look at anybody else. But if you've never trained that, they won't do it. It's like, you're not going to, if your team is solid triples, you're not going to be like, okay, we're doing a quad today. They've never done that. They're not going to pull it out for no reason. So same thing with mental skills. If you're saying just stay in your bubble, but they have never practiced that, it is not going to happen. And so create the distraction in your practice space. Bring in cheer and mascot, bring in another team, bring in parents, cut the music halfway through, just do stuff to cause a distraction and a disruption and practice handling that focus piece so that when you are in warm up like that and you've set it up, you're like, this is going to be distracting. Like, don't expect this to be our quiet little warm-up space. It's going to be chaos. So what are we going to do when the chaos is next door? Like, how are we going to handle that? And having that clear plan makes all the difference in the confidence of a dancer to say, I can walk in and do it. And especially at a lot of these events when it's like the first time you've seen this venue, right? Like you show up to Worlds and it's the first time you've ever seen anything set up like that, or the first time you go to a nationals where, you know, you're used to a 5-minute warm-up circuit and this one's 45 minutes. So like, what do you do and how do you map that out and plan for it? And having the plan does so much for your dancer's confidence.
Absolutely. And going with this, but also we talked about earlier about how we like to say that there's so much difference between generation that is coming up and the current coaches, and that can be hard to coach. What do you feel like is the biggest difference? And I get this question asked, and that's why I'm asking you too. What is the biggest difference between athletes today and athletes 5 or 10 years ago? Because I've heard people say, oh, when going back to when I was in high school, I feel like we just did this or this is how it worked, but everything evolves. No generation is the same.
Yeah. There are a few differences and actually a lot of similarities and some things that are better. So it's not just that there are problems, but the bigger challenge that I see is that they have more language and understanding of mental health than any of us have had, generally in a good way, where they understand more about taking care of myself, understanding what those negative thoughts mean, looking out for my friend who is maybe acting a little off. Like they have an understanding of mental health that is wonderful. And I'm so glad as a society, we are embracing it. And like, you can have depression and be an excellent dancer. You can have anxiety and be successful. Like it's not an either or. So that understanding is great. The challenge I think that has happened for coaches is that this generation has started to conflate mental toughness and mental health, and they're not the same thing. And so as a coach, we're trying to build mental toughness, but we're like scared that we're going to, create this mental health issue or create a culture that is not supporting them. And as athletes, there's like, well, this is too hard. You're going to hurt my mental health. It's like, no, you're okay. Like your mental health is okay. And I can challenge you and you're going to be okay. And so it's like separating. You can worry about mental health and you can care about it and you can look out for it and be a supportive, safe place and train mental toughness and challenge them and help them be resilient to that. It's understanding that as a coach, but then helping the dancer see that of like this challenge or this, routine that's too hard, that you feel like is too hard, or to what Bre was saying before, like the fact that you're an alternate this year and you don't get to dance, like this is not harming your mental health. This is an opportunity for you to learn challenge and resilience and grow. And you can protect mental health while challenging mental toughness. And our dancers think they're the same thing. And I think that's the harder challenge of this generation, is helping to teach them that those are two things.
Absolutely. That's so good. And it makes me think of, because I feel like there is, and tell me maybe this is a regional thing, but something that I've had a lot of conversations with people about recently is about how there is some negative mental health culture around dance in general.
Sure. Oh, it's not regional. That's everywhere.
Okay. Because I see it here in Vegas a lot. And I actually did a activity with my team recently where they opened up about just like deeper struggles. And it blew my mind how many of their deeper struggles came from their times at their dance studios before they joined the high school team that I coached them at, and how many of them struggled with like diagnosed clinical level anxiety and depression and self-esteem issues, and were in really bad places before they joined the team, and how much of that stemmed from, or like 100% of it stemming from their studio time. And it breaks my heart and it makes me so angry. What have you seen with that? Why, where does that come from? Why is it that way? What do we do to fix it?
And I do think it's everywhere. It's not regional, including international. I mean, I've worked with dancers all over, and there's a long history in our dance culture of perfection. And the other one that is a problem is the show must go on, which is usually true. And we say that kind of in theater, but I think we do it in dance too. We're like, oh, your knee is tweaked a little bit. You have to do this anyway. Or, you're feeling a little sick today. You will do it. Like I once had to do vignettes in my ballet company with a ridiculous fever because it was like, nobody cares. So you will have to do this routine. So it's a long standing in our dance culture. And I think there's pride for dancers and be like, I will always make this happen. I will always be perfect. I will always rise to the occasion. But that puts so much pressure on being perfect at a young age rather than the understanding of, like I was saying, messing up full out. Like you are allowed to mess up in the process of learning. And so the cultures that are so focused on perfect at a young age, and I think it comes from coaches and studio owners who have their personal worth and value wrapped up in what their dancer looks like on stage. And that's, yeah, all the nods and the snaps. Yes. And so I wish I could fix that, wave a wand, but we're performers and we want that accolade and we have those big dreams and visions. And so the owners and the directors and the coaches whose own worth is attached to my dancer scores on stage, that's all their dancers hear. You can say all the right words and say like, we just want to have fun, but they know you're full of it if that's your true belief that you care about winning first. So I think it's that the owner and coach's worth being placed on the dancer. Like now it's your job to make me feel good about myself. And that's going to cause all sorts of problems for the kids.
And I think that's why it's so, so important. Coaches, studio owners, teachers, educators, you have to do your own work before you can completely serve whoever you're serving. This is service-based work. We are in service. It is not about us. It is not about us. It is not about us. Daily, hourly, repeating that. What is best for kids? What is best for the program? And I've even said to the kids before, when we talk about effort, if I'm trying to pull out more effort from them or, having one of those days, you only get today. You only get this moment right now, and you get to decide what that looks like and feels like for you, and if that's going to push you to your goals. Here's the thing, longevity as coaches, like we get to do this next year, but as a dancer, how, this might be it because of like, you're going to another team. This is your last year on this team or that, so like really grounding them, I think really helps of like taking that off of, it's not about us. And at the end of the day, we have zero control. They go on that stage without the coaches.
It's the coach's definition of success too. It's the coach who believes like my success as a coach is only when I can put this amount of wins on my resume. And I've seen too many coaches essentially program hop, right? Like, oh, well, I'm not going to make it with this team, so I got to go coach another team because they give me a better chance of winning XYZ, and they will program hop like crazy. And it's like, that is the first one of many red flags that their personal sense of success is wrapped up in championships and titles, and rather than truly about the kids. And, when you have the programs that really are successful, you have the coaches usually who have been there a really long time and started with a program that wasn't necessarily that good and have built it to be their program. So yeah, you do have to do your own work. And I see it a lot with younger coaches. If those who stick with it and are older are able to, we just know ourselves better. You don't know your own identity at 21. I started coaching at 19. I didn't have a clue. Like it was not good. So you don't know yourself. You can't yet teach the dancers that. And we know, developmentally, you're not going to have a strong sense of self well into your 20s, early 30s. It takes a long time. And being willing to do that work is going to make you such a better coach.
Absolutely. I always am like, if I could tell my younger self this, I would. And you said the keyword red flags, which is actually the next question that we have for you. What are 3 red flags of a bad culture? And then we're also going to ask you, what are the 3 green flags of a good culture? So we'll start with the red. What are the 3 red flags of a bad culture?
Okay. I would say dancers who are afraid to make a mistake. So what that looks like practically, like if I were watching a practice and I could see the red flag, it would be the dancer who tries something one time and then says, I'm like, sorry, my hip hurts a little bit today, but I'll get it tomorrow. Or who does the like, oh, it's okay, I'll practice at home. And you're like, no, you won't. And to be fair to some coaches, there are dancers where that is their own internal work. It's not always the culture, but when it's everybody, like when you can see that no one is willing to mess up full out, no one is willing to really try, they're scared of something. They're scared of what's going to happen. So that's one big red flag of culture. Another one is how they take feedback. So if they're given feedback, what is their reaction in their body? So do they ignore it and like roll their eyes and huff and not care? Do they not listen to each other? Are they just like smile and nod, but then nothing changes? Like, how do they receive feedback from the coach and from each other? And so, the culture where no one is allowed to give feedback except a coach, sometimes you have to make that rule as a coach. I get that. But that's rooted in there was some culture issues happening that needed to get fixed.
My youth team just had that
Right.
rule.
And it's
You're gonna
yep.
not.
Sometimes you have to make that rule as a coach. And again, like some of this culture stuff, you as a coach could be doing all the right things and a certain mix of dancers comes into your program and you're like, and reset, we're going to have to fix this. And that's okay. So it's not that you did anything wrong. So yeah, feedback, making mistakes. And then I guess another red flag, I'm trying to think of behaviors that I would see. It's what's in a text thread that the coach is not on. So how are the dancers talking to each other when the coach is not in the room? And do you have the like either bad mouthing decisions or like, I don't know why we have to practice extra, we're not going to win anyway. Like, are they talking negatively behind the scenes on their phones or like on the way to the car or whatever? It would be what's the conversation outside of that practice space that the coach doesn't see.
So good. All of those. So
Yeah.
good. So now what are 3 green flags of a good culture?
Okay. Green flags. I was talking to a team last week about the concept of positive gossip. Like you can say something nice about someone when they're not there. And I hope you also say it to their face, but you can, I'm picturing like 2 captains or 2 seniors being like, did you see that little freshman? She crushed it today. Like she was working so hard. And like, I hope you celebrate that to her as well, but just, you would see that kind of like praise that was genuine, even when someone's not there. Or in another way, like if there's a bad conversation happening, it's the green flag when a dancer is willing to stop that conversation and say, hey guys, we said we weren't going to talk about that. Or like, let's not talk about her when she's not here. Like the dancer who's willing to cut off the negative gossip or the bad conversations, or we said we weren't going to talk about our rival. Like, stop, we're not doing it. And it's really hard, teenagers especially, to be the dancer to cut that conversation. But that's a big green flag for me from a culture place. If you have leaders, especially who are willing to do that. Other green flags would be those practices when you are like drilling the same thing and everybody's frustrated and everybody's annoyed at we're doing the same 8 count forever, how they're handling that monotony and pressure. So a green flag, you would see, we got this, talking each other up, the make a mistake and the deep breath and the reset and the go again. And just the camaraderie around like, we are going to get this. And there's no shame for the one person who keeps messing up. When you are making a mistake, they're handling it and resetting and going again. So like how they handle those intense pressure practices that all happen, that if they don't fall apart. Another green flag in culture, I would say how they are outside of practice. So if they're in school together, like how are they treating each other when they're in class? And I guess when I think about that too, not just each other, but how do other people outside the culture see them? So if they're a high school team, what do their teachers think? If they are an all-star program, what does your rival all-star program think of you? And like, if you were to run into that dancer in the restroom, what are you hearing from them? Like, what are they talking about when they're washing their hands? How are they talking about themselves, about other teams? So it's that perception outside of the team, because if you genuinely are a positive culture, everyone will see that. And it's not a fake facade. Other people who are not in the program can see it and feel it. Like what other coaches think, like what does the football coach think of the program? What does the basketball coach think? What does the coach of another program know of your program? And how they treat each other. So that outside perception.
Yeah, those are all so good.
Yeah.
So good. So what do you do as a coach if, all 3 of us have been doing it for a while. What do you do when you get that toxic athlete in? At what point do you, and I don't want to say like give up, but like what's a nicer way to say that, right? Like at what point do you transition from trying to coach them, trying to help them grow, being empathetic of their background, being empathetic of their struggles, helping them get to a point where they're not pulling everyone else on the team down, to the point to like I've had a kid like this, obviously, and where everyone else on the team is saying, coach, like we've had enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
What's your advice for a situation like that?
I appreciate the desire to like try to help first. And that's what most of us are here. Like you said, that we may be the first person who's holding them accountable in their life. We may be the first kind of positive culture they've ever had, and they don't know what that looks like. And so giving them a chance to acclimate. And the best thing that's going to help you usually is your dancers and your leadership, not you. That's going to help fix the toxicity better than the coach is going to be the other dancers, the ones who will call it, who will applaud when it goes well, like they fix each other better. But to your point, there is a limit. There is a time when it's no longer serving the rest of the team. And as coaches, what we often have to tell parents, right, is like, I can't make the best choice for an individual dancer. I have to make the best choice for the team as a whole. And that's not always the best choice for an individual dancer. And that's really hard when you care about them and you want them to grow and to change, but you will hit a limit. So practically speaking, the coaching practice that I think about is having clear conversations with clear behaviors that you need to see in order for them to remain a part of the program. So it can't stay in like values and thoughts, or we need you to be kind, or we need you to, like, it has to be in behaviors. What do you want to see that the rest of the team needs to see? So maybe it is in how they're taking feedback. Maybe it is in how they're behaving outside, like what they're doing in their personal lives, that breaking rules, like whatever's going on, like they're doing those. It's behaviors. What do we need to see? And if you've had clear conversations about these behaviors need to happen, and you have timelines and you have constant feedback and check-in, then eventually you have that clear evidence of like, this is what we needed to see to remain a part of the program, and it hasn't happened. And it's time for us to part ways. Your larger situation obviously makes a huge difference, right? If you're in a school program, do you need the athletic director behind you? Would they support you in that? If you're an all-star program, is it your program and you can autonomously make that choice, or is there somebody else involved? You have to have everybody behind you, because what happens to a lot of coaches in the school world, they want to remove somebody and an AD won't let them. And so knowing what's going to happen, like you don't want to say, I'm going to remove you from the program, and then the athletic director's like, no, you can't do that. And then you have to go, it's just awkward and a problem. So knowing your studio, your program, your school, what are the boundaries around your abilities? And then it's about clear communication. It's one of my favorite Brene Brown quotes, that clear is kind. And you have to be very clear about what you want to see from them, and giving them feedback on what's not happening and what is. You can still keep the positivity when they have a good day, like point it out and really praise and be excited about, maybe they're not perfect, but they're better than they were yesterday. So you keep highlighting the small progress. But yeah, sometimes there's a line.
The support system that you talked about, like from a school standpoint, like having that relationship with those people that will support you on that back end. And hopefully before like anyone's actually removed, depending on age, at college it might be different, but high school and younger, like having those conversations with parents, it's not out of the wall. It's like, this is our first conversation. So then if you get to that point, it's like, you have the documentation of, we have talked in October and then November. And I've been on that end of doing all that you can for somebody, and having the clearest kind is beautiful. I love that. Thanks for reminding me of that. But just being clear, like having the written documentation, giving chances, giving teaching, supporting, letting them know you believe in them. And like I've told kids before, I don't want to get to this point. Please, that's not something I want and I desire, and I know you have it in you. And then, but in this example, when I had to finally say, we no longer can serve you at our studio, there wasn't any drama, because it was just like,
yep, we're all on the same page.
Yeah. And it was hard, like still hard.
And I was going to say, it all goes back to your values as a coach, because when you are firm in those values, it's easy to stand up in them. And it's easy to articulate it to a parent who's upset, to an athletic director who doesn't want to support you. Like, if you can be firm in, this is my program and this is me and this is what I value, and we've articulated it and it's not happening and we have this evidence, then it's a lot easier for that support system to rally behind you. Because if you don't have your values, you start treating people differently. And that's where you get in trouble, when you have different dancers of different talent levels are getting different reactions when they're making those kinds of mistakes. So you have to be rooted in your values so that everyone is treated the same. And then, like, much more likely to have your experience where by the time it has to happen, everybody's like, yep, it's clear.
It's clear. Yeah, absolutely. So question about when things get hard. When things get hard, this could be, let's use the example of, you said it earlier, there's a part that you're trying to clean. I had this the other day, mini palm. We were like trying to get this 1/8 count, and we tried and tried and tried, and you try. And things do get hard. And you said, like, what's the culture look like? What are the reactions and the feelings and the energy in the room, right? So when things do get hard, practice isn't always going to be perfect no matter what level. If you're at a high school level, it's not going to be perfect every day. It's not going to be butterflies and rainbows. And there are going to be hard moments. And as a coach, you have to read those moments, obviously. And what's your suggestion on how to take a maybe low energy practice or a derailed practice and end on a high note, or to reframe it? Like, what do you suggest when those things get hard in those intense moments? What's your suggestion?
Yeah, good question. Because we all have been there. If you're those days are going to come. So I try to start those days talking about that, right? Where you set the expectation, or they know, like, this is the day we're cleaning this section. Everybody take a deep breath. Here we go. And reminding them, like, what do we want this to look like at our next competition, or whatever that goal is. And like, there is a goal in mind. We're not just being repetitive to be obnoxious. Like, what do we want out of this? This is going to be hard. And setting it up that it's going to be hard, but I believe in you. I am going to keep pushing us because I think this can be that much better. Are you with me? Are you ready to do this? And so I try to start a practice like that when you know you're going to get into it. Or like when you make a change, you're like, now we have to drill this 50 times because I had to adjust this one piece. I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to do this a bunch right now because we want this to be the new muscle memory. Like, just take a second and articulate and remind them, like, this is not a punishment. This is for our end goal. This is what we wanted. So take a deep breath. Let's do it. To reset in high energy, sometimes one thing I love to do, you kind of gamify it. So I call it 3 is key. Like, if you can do a section, small section, 4/8 maybe, if you can do a section, I don't want to say perfectly, but if you can do it like whatever your standard is in that moment, right? Which looks different in October versus January but if you can do it well right now, okay, we got it. That's one. If you can do it again, like that first time might be luck. If you can do it twice, that might be a coincidence. If you can do it 3 times, we've got it. And so it's hitting that section 3 times in a row. And like, if you get to 2 and you make a mistake, you go back to 1. And that only works in a good culture, but it does help boost that culture because you get to 2 and you'll have the people like, okay, we got this, fight for it. Like, we got to go full out. We have to go for it. Remember, this changes on 1 now. We got that. And they will talk each other through it. And then if there is a mistake, often it's not the same person. Like, different people make mistakes different times. And that's also just real. Like, we have to get to a place where everybody is hitting this 3 times. And so that also gives them the end point of like, once we get this, I'm going to walk away. We're going to leave this alone and we can move on and we can play a game. We can go do a different routine. We can, let this go. And so that also helps of just a clear end point. So even if you say like, we are just going to drill the heck out of this and I got 7 minutes, and then we'll stop. Can you give me 7 minutes? When you're at the end and you're dying and everybody's upset. When, as a dancer, when you feel like there's no end in sight, that's when you start to fall apart. So it's just giving it a clear end point and then sticking to your promise about what that will be. As we know, we always hold back. If you say we're going to run it twice full out, the first time is always half anyway. So being able to have a clear end and expectation of what needs to happen in order for that end to be rewarded, that helps them keep that focus and keep that fight going. And the 3 is key has helped. And you just have to be careful with that, with what skills you're doing. Like, don't do it if there's head springs or lots of kicks or something where you could hurt your body doing it that many times. I use that for more like, we had to change the choreography in a way that's messing with everybody's memory kind of thing.
So good. I've been taking notes. I have like all the things that I now want to take back to my team, and I could just keep picking your brain forever. For our listeners who do want more Dr. Chelsea Pierotti, where can they get more of you?
Thank you. I'm glad you're taking stuff away. That's always the goal. We want more things to try. So I guess I would invite people to listen to my podcast. It's called Passion for Dance. I focus on the mental skills, but it's community, mindset, resilience, and motivation. So interviews and solo shows just to help the teachers and the dancers. There's both. So I think a lot of teachers will play the podcast to their dancers. So sometimes you know what you want to say, but you don't know how to say it. And I try to record that for you so that you can have it for your dancers. So Passion for Dance, wherever you get your podcasts.
Love that. And you are on Instagram as well, right? What is your Instagram handle?
Dr. Chelsea.Pierotti.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I think that will lead us to our closing question. Natasha, if you want to take it away.
Yes. Okay. So just like our beginning, we have a closing question that we ask everyone. And that is, what do you want your legacy to be?
Lovely question. Yeah. Well, I think about legacy a lot, and it's a Hamilton thing. I don't know if you are, I'm such a huge Hamilton fan, and when we talk about legacy, it makes me think about that. And so it is important to think about what we want to leave with, but I don't want to frame it in how other people receive it, because your legacy is how other people see you, but I can't control how other people are going to remember me or take that away or what they're going to learn. So I want my legacy to be that I am someone who is a model for what I teach. So when I talk about doing the hard thing, I'm someone who will do it. When I'm talk about trying something new when it's scary, I'm going to do it. And if I talk about that resilience and being kind and sitting through hard emotions, that I'll do it. So I want to be the person who is modeling and emulating everything that I'm trying to teach to others. I'm never above that. I'm always learning. I've always got more to grow. And I want the legacy to be, you can be the teacher and the learner.
Amazing. I got teary-eyed. I don't know. Just I think that's what we are all trying to do at the end of the day. Like you said, like model when things are hard, let them know it's hard. As adults,
Yeah.
we think it's like you've arrived. You never arrive. You never arrive. So it's always when hard things happen, that's awesome. You've built that resiliency. So expect more hard things to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always tell the dance, I'm like, there is no top of the mountain. And that's the beauty of it. Like as soon as you get something, it's what's next, and not in a bad way. Like celebrate the success you just had, but what's next in a really beautiful way. So yeah. There's no top. Keep going.
Well, Dr. Chelsea, it has been so awesome to connect with you. Finally, we've been trying to put this together for a while now, and it finally connected. We finally got to connect, and just thank you for sharing, and thank you for pouring this energy into our dance community. It is needed more and more. And we hope that everybody out there will have a Dr. Chelsea in their studios, in their lives, and in on their teams. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you both.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Marley podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Marley